And again, with this quadratic expression, notice that the coefficient on x squared is not 1. So we're going to use this factoring by grouping method. And we need to break up the minus 13x into two different terms so that we can use the grouping method. Because for the grouping method, you really need 4 terms, and this right now only has 3. So let's find those two numbers, a and b, so that we can split up the minus 13x. We know that they add to minus 13, and they multiply to the product of 2 and 20. Because it's always going to be that they multiply to the product of the coefficient on x squared and the constant term. So in this case, they multiply to 40, and they add to minus 13. So we have to write out our list of factor pairs for 40. And honestly, this is just the most tedious part. And a lot of times you can just guess your way to the answer very quickly. But if you want to be straightforward and thorough, then the method that will surely get you the answer is just to write out all the pairs. So you can do 1 and 40. And for this one, I'm just going to assume that it could also be the negatives of each of those, because a negative times a negative would give you positive. So we can also do 2 and 20. We can do 4 and 10. We can do 5 and 8. And that would be it. And like I said, that they could also be the negative pairs. So both of them could also be negative. So minus 2 and minus 20, minus 4, minus 10, and minus 5 and minus 8. And since we know that they have to add up to a negative number, that's our clue that both of them will be negative. So I'll actually just look at the negative pairs of these, but the positive pairs would exist as well. And so which of these pairs would add up to negative 13? And that would be this one. Since minus 5 plus negative 8 would give you minus 13. And again, it doesn't matter what you call A and what you call B. You can switch them if you want. But we're going to break up this minus 13x into two terms now. So let's start by doing that. We have 2x squared. And instead of minus 13x, we're going to write minus 5x minus 8x, since these do combine to give you minus 13x. So we're not changing the equation by breaking it up. And from here, we'll use our grouping method. So it doesn't matter how you group it. Let's group these together and these together. But if you want to switch and put minus 8x here and minus 5x here, that would work as well. And so from this one, it looks like out of the numbers, you can't pull anything out. 1 is the biggest thing that goes into both 2 and negative 5. But they each share an x. So let's pull x out, and here you're left with just 2x minus 5. And over here, I'm going to pull out, it looks like 4 is the biggest whole number that goes into both 8 and 20. But again, I'm going to pull out the negative as well, because notice the coefficient here on x is a positive number. So I'm going to pull out negative 4. And so here I'd be left with just 2x, and the sign will flip now because I pulled out the negative, and then pulling 4 out from 20, or essentially dividing 20 by 4, you would be left with 5. And notice we ended up with the same expression in both sets of parentheses. So out of these two terms, this one here and this one here, they share the same common factor, this 2x minus 5. So that's what we're going to pull out from both of them. So I'm going to factor out the 2x minus 5. Here I'm left with just an x. And here I'm left with minus 4. And let's check it just to make sure. You never want to assume your answer is right unless you've checked it. So we're going to remultiply it out. So the 2x goes into both of those. So you get 2x squared, and 2x times minus 4 is minus 8x. Then we do the minus 5 distributing to both of those. Minus 5 times x is minus 5x. And minus 5 times minus 4 would be positive 20. And notice, these would recombine to give you this minus 13x term. So we checked it, and it worked, which means we can feel very confident that this is the factored form of this quadratic expression. So let's do one more of these, just to finish off the practice, because lots of examples are really needed to understand this method. So we're looking for our two numbers because we want to split up this minus 24x term so that we can use the factoring by grouping method. We need to break this up into two terms. And those two terms we're looking for, or at least I should say the coefficients of those two terms, we'll call them a and b. And we know that they multiply to the product of -7 and -9. Since it's always the coefficient on x squared times by the constant term. So in this case, you get a positive 63. And then these numbers we know add up to the coefficient on x. So in this case, -24. So we can write the different combinations of numbers, or the factor pairs, that multiply to give us 63. So it could be 1 and 63. And with all of these, it could also be the negative side of it. And I'm actually just going to write the negative pairs because they both have to be negative, since they're both going to add to give us a -24. And they both have to be the same sign because we have a positive number. It couldn't be that one is negative and one is positive, or else this product would be negative. So I'll just write the negative pairs. And so we can also do -3 and -21. And honestly, I'm just going to stop there because that's what we needed. So if you're ever writing out these pairs and you come across the one that you need, the one that actually adds up to -24, then you can stop. So we found A and we found B. Again, it doesn't matter which is which. And so we're going to break up this -24x term. So we have -7x squared, and then -3x minus 21x minus 9. And we can factor by grouping. So notice in this first pair that they both have negative numbers, so I can factor out a negative, and they both have an x. But no whole number besides 1 can divide into 7 and 3 evenly. So I'm just going to pull out the -x, and here I'm left with 7x, and here I'm left with positive 3. Notice when you pull the negative out, all the signs became positive. And here I'm again going to pull out a negative, and it looks like the number 3 would divide into both of those. And so here I'd be left with a 7x, and here I'd be left with positive 3. And since we ended up with the same expression in both terms here, we can factor that out. So I'll factor out the 7x plus 3 from this term and this term. And here I'm left with -x, and here I'm left with -3. So we think we have an answer, but we have to multiply it out just to check our work. So doing that, 7x times -x would be -7x squared. 7x times -3 would be -21x. 3 and -x would be -3x. And 3 and -3 would be -9. And since when you recombine the -21x and the -3x, they do give you -24x, we know that this is in fact the right answer.